I've been browsing, treading water that they drowning. My head on a swivel, yeah. It's only real in my surroundings.
Hello and welcome to episode 7 of the Smash or Pass podcast, part of the Smash Accept network of podcasts. I'm your host, Michael Royer. You can find me on Twitter at DynastyDadFF. People are still a little confused by the drop of the underscore there. You know, people are like, hey, I'm already following that guy. Yo, no underscore now. It's just DynastyDadFF. And we're back to, just the two of us again. I bumped some of that music there. Little just the two of us. Nerd Boy, what's good, man? Today's crazy. Crazy with free agency.
This is what we live for, right? This is fantasy football Christmas Eve, pretty much. We're just sitting there refreshing our phones and trying to see what's happening and following all the news and stuff. And we're getting some juicy legal tampering intros right now, but I expect some more dominoes to fall in the next couple of days, which I'm excited to kind of go through and I guess we're going one quarterback today, so we're going to see exactly where these guys fall, right?
Yeah, and this almost feels like the NBA trade deadline. Like this is for us true degenerates, we're seeing things like Raheem Mostert, and we're getting excited. Not just the big names, but we're seeing the small names, and we're trying to figure out why is this team making this move, and is this opening up for another guy? And like you alluded to, we're going to start out with one quarterbacks today because I've been seeing all over Twitter, and I know we have a lot of new listeners, a lot of new fans of the show that still play one quarterback league. You and I, we're degenerates. It's super flex. I even play a couple triple flexes. I know that's just a crazy scenario, but in the one quarterback league, I want to talk to you guys real quick. I saw a poll, and that's why we kind of decided to do this. It was Josh Allen or CeeDee Lamb. This is a very obvious question when you play one quarterback because CeeDee Lamb is the 104. Josh Allen is a quarterback. There's, you turn to look at things and you're like, super flex, right? It becomes such a shortage because there are not 24 quarterbacks that you want to start. But when you're talking about your QB 12, you're starting maybe Dak Prescott, Deshaun Watson, Daniel Jones, and you're okay with that, right? The difference between 1 to 12 is nowhere near the difference between 12 to 24. And I think a lot of you guys are just kind of blindly voting on that. But looking real quickly at ADP for March from Ryan McDowell over at DLF, it's Jefferson's 1, Chase 2, A.J. Brown 3, Lamb 4, Bijan 5, Jonathan Taylor 6, McCaffrey 7, Olave all the way up to 8. So you start talking about taking them quarterbacks, and this is foreign to you and I because Olave is usually like 308, 305 to 308. Now he's 108. Waddle's 109, Garrett Wilson 110, Amon-Ra St. Brown 111, and Breece Hall 112. Just going over that list, and I know we talked, sometimes one quarterback's labeled a little bit more of your casual, dynasty owner. What's the biggest standout from you there? Because I'm seeing some values that don't really align with what you and I are talking about, even if we're talking Superflex and taking those positions out.
Yeah, I think what you alluded to is the fact that one quarterback leagues are where people start. People don't get into fantasy and jump into Superflex. That's just it's a step above the one quarterback for a couple different reasons. And you're finding, probably seeing these results from people that maybe just jumped into fantasy this year, having Olave up there with that tier of players is the biggest standout for me by far, because, maybe these people just saw that 1 year, they see the rookie situation, and then they see Carr coming in and think that he's going to, make that huge jump to the next tier, or I'm not sure what these people are thinking, because it's very foreign to me. I'm not too familiar with one quarterback ADP, so it's a fun thing to look into, definitely.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm looking at DLF right now, and it's like at the 102, and you and I think sometimes we're so far out there ahead of things with how we rank things and how we do things and how we prepare our listeners. Right now on DLF, it says, who are you taking at 102? Would you want Jackson Smith and Jigba or DJ Moore? And you're like, whoa. Like the equivalent there for me is in Superflex, Jackson Smith and Jigba's going 105 and DJ Moore, maybe the 108, in that area. And And I think that we're going to break that down. We're going to talk about these rookies, but I already brought up DJ Moore. That's the first big news. What's your instant reaction there, right? Like you see that that we trade up to 1, and then you see DJ Moore as part of that deal in that Carolina. So what does that do? Your instant reaction, your gut feeling on DJ Moore?
Yeah, my instant reaction was I jumped in the air, I think, because I own so much Fields right now, and that move right there is just showing me, it's validating me. For all the times that I took Fields in startups and was like, oh, they're going to build around Fields. They're making him the guy. And I needed a little bit of validation there. I needed people to just say, I don't buy into the whole, they're going to trade Fields thing, but I needed that. It made me feel good. But with DJ Moore, it felt lateral at first. But I also think, Fields is still growing and maturing into the starting quarterback, and I think he's going to take a little bit of a jump this year with just everything that they've done to that team, and DJ Moore is going to help with that, and I think in turn DJ Moore is probably going to get a bump too. I think they're both going to improve from last season. DJ Moore might have a little more consistency. He was up and down with Carolina. They had all those different quarterbacks throwing to him, and he just couldn't get into a comfortable rhythm. I think he's going to have more of a rhythm this year for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, you look at his reception perception, 71.2% success versus man, 81.2 versus zone. He had a career high in double coverage. There was nothing there in Carolina. The guy has A+ hands. He's got wheels. I mean, I'm excited to see what he can do. But I'm more excited about these rookies right now, right? I mean, this is what we're going to start talking about. So let's break right into it. The first thing is Bijan's clearly the 101, right? I mean, it doesn't matter if you're super flex or you're one quarterback. The difference now, to me, Mike, when I look at it, is the difference between the 101 and the 102 in a one quarterback versus the 101 and the 102 in a super flex, I think is a huge difference, because we look at what we're doing in super flex, and Bijan goes 109, and then we're talking about Stroud or Young or Richardson, whoever that is. The 102 usually goes 203, 205, but in a one quarterback league, I mean, we're talking about the Bijan is the 104 now, and we're talking about we're eliminating these quarterbacks, and then we have Jackson Smith and Jigba at 2 going in that same area as like mid to late second. So that's a huge jump when you take these quarterbacks out.
Yeah, it's an adjustment for me because I'm always thinking quarterbacks. So it's a little jarring to see that. But I think if you are in a 1 QB, knowing exactly where to take these guys is really important. If I'm seeing these polls of the 102 or Chris Godwin, I know that I can get a really good jump on JSN if that's where you guys are doing your draft as far as taking the rookies in your startup. I would pay attention and definitely listen in on where we value these, because I have JSN over that tier of player by a lot. There's a lot of rounds in between Godwin and JSN for me right now.
Yeah, and if you guys want to be ahead of the curve, like in both Discords and in the Patreon, you can see where we have guys ranked and what their equivalent value is in a super flex league. So, I mean, you can look that it'll say, Garrett Wilson is the equivalent of the 103, 104 and start to move up. Or you see that Treylon Burks is the equivalent of the 108. And then what I'm telling everybody to do is there's 4 quarterbacks. We know those 4 quarterbacks are going to go in the top 5, 6 picks. So subtract 4. Just take those rankings and subtract it by 4. And you're going to be so much further ahead than the people that we're talking about. Because we're looking at this and it's like, if you are literally debating the 102 and Chris Godwin, we're a little bit behind and we're going to catch you up. Like we want you to take that 102 because JSN is going to put you in that spot. But if you're at the 101, you have an interesting situation, right? So you have your choice of it's Bijan and the equivalent guys of CeeDee Lamb and AJ Brown. And I know we've talked about it in Superflex, of how we compare that. If I'm coming to you right now and I have the 101, and I think we got to look at what your direction is here. But if I have the 101 and you have CeeDee Lamb, are you smashing that or are you passing it?
I think the 101 is slightly above CeeDee Lamb right now, but I think we've touched on this in previous pods where your builds, Bijan is going to hold that value for a much smaller window than CeeDee Lamb will, because like I say to people in startups, the receivers stay in that first round a lot longer than the running backs do. We see JT, he's already in the third round, and he was in the first round for 2 years. Actually, maybe not even a full 2 years. So I would probably take the 101 over CeeDee right now. But if you're not in a window to win, moving off of that for a small plus as far as like going 101 to CeeDee and mid-second or something, if you can pull that, that's a great move too. So it's dependent on your team more than anything else.
And 2 years ago, the ADP was 9 running backs and 3 wide receivers in that first round, or 2 wide receivers and a tight end. Now you look at it, and it's very, very wide receiver based, and I think for a good reason. Is like, I have not done a 1 quarterback startup draft for 7 years, but if I was, I think I would be really hesitant to take Bijan over CeeDee Lamb, because if you look at, your guys in the 4th round, you would be choosing between your running backs. You could still get a Najee Harris, but wide receiver wise, it depletes so hard by the 4th round. You're looking at Terry McLaurin. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's an area where I would much rather have, CeeDee Lamb and Nick Chubb or Najee Harris than I would Bijan Robinson and Terry McLaurin. And just something to look into there. I mean, Mike and I want to bring you where our rankings are, taking out the quarterbacks. We all know Bijan's the one. That hasn't even been any kind of debate. Neither has the number 2 and 3 have been a slight debate. And you and I agree. We go back and forth on this. I think right now we both have, we actually flip-flopped him. So you have JSN as the 5. Man, did he look good at the combine. Everything that he did improved his stock. I have Jahmyr Gibbs I moved him up to my 2. I go back and forth between both of them. It's like Jahmyr Gibbs looked phenomenal. We talked a lot about Alvin Kamara comps. I think he looks like a better, faster Aaron Jones. Like, everything I'm seeing from him looks fantastic. Everything we've seen from Jackson Smith and Jigba, we were trying to discount it. We were trying to push him back, and everybody in the industry is like, yeah, let's push Smith and Jigba. He doesn't do this well. He doesn't do that well. He's not elite at this. But if you look at the company that he's in and what he's able to do, I think you can't go wrong with either of these 2 guys. And JSN is going to instantly become a top 10 to 12 dynasty wide receiver.
Yeah, I think Gibbs is definitely a great consolation prize if you do miss on Bijan. If I could go either way, JSN or Gibbs. It's not cut and dry for me. I don't mind either one. Whatever one falls to me at 103, I'll probably be pretty happy about that. I do love JSN. Watching him do the 3-cone drill, and he is elite, and he doesn't need to rely on his speed. That was one of the knocks on him, where people are saying he's not going to be as fast or this and that. And, people are saying he only has 1 year of production in college. And I like to point out that, Justin Jefferson only had 1 year of elite production in college. Jamar Chase only had 1 year of elite production in college.
And I'm glad you said those 2 guys, because it's like, I've been talking a bunch with a couple of guys on the side, and I'm like, he has like really close ceiling there with those guys. It's not. Yeah. I know a lot of dynasty analysts and people have been like, well, they're like, he has a ceiling of Amon-Ra St. Brown. I mean, I think he has the floor of Amon-Ra St. Brown and has the ceiling of these guys. Because when you watch him play, the speed isn't fantastic. But when you watch Jefferson, that speed wasn't, what stuck out. When you watch Chase, that wasn't what stuck out. It's those, like you said, the 3-cone drill, the nuances, the stuff the way he gets off the line. He is so fast. He's so quick. I mean, that short shuttle at the combine just got me excited.
Yeah, his footwork is amazing. He can stop on a dime. He can cut different directions. And you know what? I'm not worried about his separation at all. I think that's going to be very easy for him to translate to the NFL.
And sure. I think, like I said, there's no real wrong way to go. I've gone back and forth with Gibbs and JSN, and I think every time I do, I'm not even upset about it, because I know the thing with Gibbs, and we're going to move to him at 103 here, is we talk about his size. When we talk about the size where he's at 199, I feel like he's going to put on some weight. But man, the way this is the best pass catcher we've seen. Like, this guy has the pass catching chops where, depending on what the situation, kind of like we talked about with Treylon Burks last year, like the right offensive coordinator with Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be electrifying. It's going to be exciting. He's got that burner speed and that 4.36 40 dash. I mean, this guy has the agility and the hands to be a real difference maker. And we found from guys like Alvin Kamara, and we found guys in the past, they don't need 20 carries to get it done. If he gets 15 carries and 6-7 receptions, those are the guys that I want on my fantasy team.
Yeah, he doesn't need a lot to do a lot on your fantasy team, for sure. What I like about Gibbs is his vision is amazing. I can tell that he's always thinking as far as what he's going to do next before he does it. Like, he knows that this guy's going to come this way and he's going to cut that way. He knows exactly where he's going to go before he goes. A lot of running backs are just doing it and hoping for the best. Like, he is methodical with his movement, and he hits that hole with amazing speed. He can make something out of nothing with whatever he gets, and that's what I love about a pass catching back. He's always a threat for a big play.
A lot of people get down on, he is the highest in the class of negative carries, but there's those guys. I mean, we said the same thing, and I'm not comparing him to Barry Sanders, but Barry Sanders was in that way. He's that elusive tackle breaking guy who's going to try to make you miss, but what he might miss a little bit when we're talking about inline running. I mean, if you look at his career, 104 receptions, 1,200 yards, 1,217 yards, 8 receiving line. I mean, that is unbelievable. Like, we're talking about one of the most special pass catchers we've seen, and I want that. I know we talk a lot about making sure we're trying to get wide receivers, but I think Jahmyr Gibbs is a guy that's going to have longevity because of those pass catching ability. He's not that guy, we talk about it all the time, in that 2 to 3 year window as a running back, because of those pass catching ability that's going to keep him on the field. Then we get a little bit dicey. So that's our 1, 2, and 3. I think that's pretty chalk. We talk the same way in Superflex. Mm-hmm. You and I are we're in the same area here. I think the next tier is Charbonnet, Quentin Johnson, and Jordan Addison. If you're at the 104, who's that guy for you? Because I feel like, and we talk about tiers all the time, and Bijan's in a tier by himself, and if we're talking one quarterback, Gibbs and JSN are still in that tier. That next tier is those 3 guys for me, and I think you're playing ceiling versus floor, and you're also playing, what kind of need you have. And I always say, draft based off of talent, not need, but all 3 of these guys can play.
Yeah, they are very close, with Quentin Johnson being somebody that is a little more raw, but has the higher ceiling, and Addison being somebody that is pretty safe. I think is going to translate day one as far as skill set goes. I've often said that he's probably the most pro ready wide receiver of the class. I've said that he's the Olave of this class, where his route tree is amazing. He has discipline, running ability. He kind of can read defenses pretty well. Has good hands. He is versatile, and he thinks, I think he just will be a producer day one. So I think I have to take him, but Sharp is a close second in that tier for me. I think we'll touch on whoever we don't talk about right now the most, but
yeah, let's stick with Addison, because that's okay. You're absolutely right. Like, he is, I feel like he's a slightly lower version than what we're talking about with JSN. Is he ran a 4.49, and at 173 pounds, that gives him a speed score of 85. And I know that's among the 50 wide receivers in this class, that's the 3rd lowest. But what the guy does, and that is going to drive down some stock, I think. And if that's the case, you guys need to jump in on that, because Jordan Addison is a quarterback's best friend. I mean, the guy was a big playmaker at Pitt with over 100 receptions in 2021. Then he comes and he goes to USC, and he's another fantastic stretch. I mean, like very few wide receivers. You put Quentin Johnson in another system year 2, and he's not going to have that same kind of production. Like the ability to do that for 2 different quarterbacks for me, I think is absolutely incredible. Great route runner, almost always in the slot. Again, you put him in the right situation, and he's going to be the quarterback's best friend. He's going to have that PPR, seasons that you're going to absolutely love. And I'm not selling him short, but I think you're going to see a lot more of you're going to see some early Jarvis Landry numbers where, he's not going to have huge.
Sure.
I think he's better than that, but I think you're going to see some of those kind of numbers where we start to see JSN really move himself up. And you say Jarvis Landry now and people get upset, but those first 3 seasons, 100+ receptions every year. And I can see him having 70 receptions year 1 and not even question it at all. I think you're going to get immediate production from Jordan Addison. And we talk about like this dream scenarios. If you put him with a quarterback like Justin Herbert, you put him in one of these offenses where we're looking for another big playmaker. And I think Jordan Addison is a guy that's pro ready. He's going to come in and jump right off the bat. And like you said with Olave, like he could have that kind of season year 1, and I think that would be absolutely huge in this particular class.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Kenny Pickett's tape from college, it's a Jordan Addison highlight reel. Mm-hmm. He boosted up Kenny Pickett to, I think to where he is as far as, that draft capital and where he is right now starting for the Steelers. I think he had a big play in that for sure.
Yeah, the next guy, and he's my RB3 in the class, but he has been the entire time, and I think he's been right there for you as well. 6 foot, 214 pounds, Zach Charbonnet. I mean, he's that big back with solid speed, and I think he has 3-down potential at the next level, and I'm excited to see where he lands because with the Bruins, over 1,300 yards, just absolutely touchdown machine with 13 touchdowns, and he went back to college to prove that he could be a pass catcher, and this year he improved on it, and I think Charbonnet is that guy that I think is going to just be someone that I think is a difference maker day 1. I mean, I don't know what the ideal running back situation for you would be here, but I think Charbonnet maybe to Atlanta, Charbonnet to the right situation, maybe, there's so many moving pieces right now. I think he is someone that I think is going to just generally move up above these 2 wide receivers just for the fact that the running backs might separate themselves, and I think Charbonnet gets round 2 draft capital.
Yeah, I don't see Charbonnet coming out of the second round. I think he's definitely secured that second round DC. He is the most well-rounded running back outside of Bijan in this class. So I think you're right on the fact that he can easily slide into a 3-down role. He is, he's, like you said, improved on his pass catching. He's got great vision. He can run north-south, he can run on the outside. He's just all around just a well-rounded, talented running back that I think would benefit a lot of teams. I'm really curious to see. I think Eckler is a big moving piece right now. I think we're going to touch on him a little later, but there's going to be, I think, a lot of shakeups in the running back game as far as what teams are going to do because they see this class and they see that, there's so much talent and they're not going to have to pay the money that they're paying their current running backs to stay there. So we're going to see a lot of moving pieces, and I think it's going to be a really fun offseason for us fantasy guys for sure. So
I saw a couple scenarios of Eckler possibly to the Bears. I saw Eckler to the Bills. I doubt they keep him in the AFC. But, I mean, then I started thinking, man, can you imagine Bijan with the Chargers like that?
Yeah.
Or even Charbonnet in this hand. And I think if Charbonnet goes to the Chargers and Eckler would leave, I mean, he solidifies himself as the 103. Or 103, 104. He's in that same debate as Gibbs then. In that area, I would still have a hard time not taking Gibbs, but I think Charbonnet is that guy. I'm super excited. We were already alluding to this a little bit, but I mean, what if he goes to the Eagles? The big news now is obviously Rashad Penny, and it's all over Twitter, and I think we'd be remiss if we don't talk about it. I mean, I saw right now people are paying the 202, 203 for Rashad Penny. Now, whoa. The talent is phenomenal, right? Like, he is a talented back, but man, we are there's no chance that the Eagles roll in with Penny, Gainwell, and Boston Scott. They're going to draft a running back. They are definitely going to draft a running back, and I think Penny's a nice, for the more bang for your buck. It's a great value for them. But man, if you can get a early to mid 23 second for Rashad Penny after, in startups he was going for something in that range of 305. Yeah, I would sell that. Just make that happen, because he's coming off major surgery. He's going to be a difficult guy that, he's going to obviously make the team. He's going to have an impact. But man, if you can get a 23 second for him right now, I feel like that's the play.
Yeah, I saw a lot today in my leagues of 25 seconds for Rashad Penny. And even that seemed like a significant overpay, but I can't say anything about his talent. Everything all the knocks are his health and him staying on the field. But there's no way that the Eagles aren't going to take a running back, and that's going to be one of the most sought after rookies, I think, who goes to the Eagles. And the way I see the Bengals playing out, I think whoever goes to the Bengals too is going to be a high rookie running back, because they let Samaje Perine walk today, and Mixon, obviously, we all know is, I don't know, he's definitely on his last leg as far as staying with that organization goes. So those are the two teams I'm really watching right now, is Eagles and the Bengals, and trying to, see their next moves. And if Mixon gets cut, it's wheels up on whoever goes over there.
I love it. And Rashad Penny, they just released the details. It's a $1.35 million deal with potential to be 2.1. That is a smash accept from an owner standpoint. Like, why would you not? Because the guy's led the NFL in yards per carry over the last 2 years. It's over 6 yards a carry. But, I know we're getting off on a sidetrack. I had a lot of questions asking me about Penny. For me, yes, I would sell for any 23 second. Yes, I would sell for any 24 second, because we're in that area where it's like, my man's been labeled injury prone now for a good reason. Like when he's healthy, great. But at some point, these they start to add up, man. We start to go to a point where it's just the best ability is availability, and you just don't have that with Rashad Penny. Now, back to Quentin Johnston. So we both are Quentin Johnston. We're both on the same page there, man. Like, the ceiling on this guy is incredible. Like, the ceiling has like a DK Metcalf type of vibe of, what his route tree is, what he is athletically. He's got a limited route tree, but man, the guy is an athletic freak. But when I watch the tape, we see a lot of body catching, we see a lot of drops, we see one of the most raw prospects out there. But if he goes to the right scenario where he can be, we talked about the Chargers again, but Mike Williams on the outside, like if he's going to be a field stretcher and he can learn from like a consummate pro as that number one, like we have maybe Minnesota and he starts to learn from Jefferson, or, he goes to that right spot. I think the ceiling is very high, but I am not going to own a lot of Quentin Johnston. I just flat out, like, there are years, last year I didn't own a lot of Jameson Williams. Not that I'm down on Jameson Williams as a player. It's just, I didn't own a lot. And I think this year, that's going to be Quentin Johnston for me. I'm not going to own a lot of them.
Yeah, I think I'm going to take him in a few leagues, and I'm high on him talent-wise. I think he's an athletic freak, and man, he's fun to watch for sure. He can just break it loose, much like a Jameson, where his speed, and he can just go up, grab the ball. He's like a mix between Pickens and J-Mo. He will have these amazing catches, and like, you blow your mind. You're like, oh my god, like, that was insane. And then he'll drop a 5-yard dump off or something. It's like, he's just raw talent. And I want to say if he hones it in and he can be a little more disciplined, with the small little mechanical stuff, that he's going to be a stud. He has that potential to just boom, but I think it's going to take a little bit of time, and you're going to have to be a little more patient. Whereas, Addison is going to be pretty ready day one. So if you have a nice, rebuild roster and you want to wait it out a year, I think, QJ is definitely the way to go. But if you're looking for somebody to impact your team immediately, I would probably, pass up on QJ if that's an option, at least.
Yeah. And what I want to say about that is it's not saying I don't I don't like what he has, I'm saying I'm going to move around, and that's how I look at my rookie drafts. I try to move around, and the move for me, and yes, if you're on a rebuilding team, this is the kind of home run swing you want to take as a guy like Quentin Johnston. For me, I'm trying to move back into someone who I like even more in Josh Downs. We both have him as the next guy there, and you can argue that he's in that tier. And I had a guy today. I mean, in Superflex, I saw someone trade the 111 for Calvin Ridley, and I'm like, please don't do that. He's like, who's gonna be there? I was like, Josh Downs, man. Like in this particular instance, that's our 107. I know you've loved him the entire process, and I think I'm really coming around on him. Zoltan's got me convinced as well. Like this guy, if he gets round 2 draft capital, maybe even round 1. He has that stuff.
Yeah, he's very well rounded. I love his game. I've always been on Josh Downs. He is just he's explosive. He gets open all the time. He's got amazing separation. He's a fast guy. I don't remember what his time was in the combine, but I wish I could pull that up right now. It's definitely up there. He just has a great route tree. He has good footwork. I really like his movement on the line. He's got some good almost like elusiveness as far as his movement goes. Mm-hmm. He really can shake a defender, and he just has good hands too. There's just I can't gush enough about Josh Downs. I think he's going to be an amazing steal at the end of Superflex leagues, and I think I would probably take him over QJ in a couple of leagues personally, but I have him pretty high. He's probably going to land in a pretty good spot. I think personally, I would love to see him in a Chargers team or something, but we'll see.
We got a couple. Oh man, I'm trying to find the 40 time on there, and I saw a couple unofficials, but like from the longest yard when they're talking about Nelly, he's so fast. He makes fast guys look not fast. I mean, Josh Downs can fly, and I think he's a guy that we're gonna own a lot of, and I think you're gonna be very happy about it. Absolutely. The next guy we have on that list, we vary a little bit here. So the next tier, I think you have A-Chain as your next guy. I have Zach Evans, and I think you have him in that same area. Sean Tucker, as well as I think this is an area right now where these running backs, and you even have Kendre Miller in there. So we talk about Kendre Miller, Sean Tucker, A-Chain, and Zach Evans, and I think this is an area where everyone I keep saying, they're like, who do you like out of this area? Who's what? I think draft capital is going to be absolutely paramount for these guys. I think the NFL is going to tell us what they expect out of them, where they're going to go. They all have high upside. They all have slight downside as well. Let's start out with A-Chain. I mean, obviously the downside is his size, but the upside, this guy is like a human joystick. Like this guy in the open field has a 0 to 60 like no one else. I mean, he absolutely can fly.
Yeah, he's very fast. He's a great pass catcher. He actually did wideout drills in the combine, just to show his pass catching ability. He is versatile, which, is very important for me. I want to see, somebody with versatility as a running back where I know he's going to get that play. I think he can step in and have a role immediately with his pass catching ability. He's lined up in the slot. I don't know the exact percentage, but he's a big slot guy. And I kind of see him as a Pollard who was, a receiver out of college and came in and, he got to flash that receiving ability today. He's a little smaller, but I think he plays a little bigger. So I would love to see where he lands. Like you said, I think all these guys are pretty much in the same tier right now. And I do need to see some DC and landing spots before I kind of see a little more separation. But I have him in the front of that tier because of that versatility and because I think he could probably find a role wherever he goes, whereas I think one of the other guys is more of a, 3-down running back and is going to need to really solidify a role before he sees some time.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at 20% of his carries were over 10 yards this year. I mean, that's insane. You know, like you look at what he's able to do, and he had 60 pass catches over the final 2 seasons there. And I think I really like your Tony Pollard comp there, because Pollard was a little undersized and kind of same kind of thing. You know, played a little bit of the wide receiver role, and I think if he goes in, he's going to be lightning to someone's thunder. You know, like he's going to be that guy that's a great change of pace that can go in there and I think compete day one. I think we both have liked Zach Evans throughout the process, sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less. He has good size and power as well as terrific speed. And I like what I see from him as well, because I just need to see the draft capital. He was someone that we had much higher, you know, maybe in that same area as Charbonnet. I know you did as well. And now he's kind of come down a little bit. Draft capital is going to be everything, but 5'11", 202, he has all the abilities to be a plus running back in this league as well.
Yeah, Zach Evans is one of my favorite guys, and I'm rooting for him. You know, I think his vision has a little bit of improvement to be made. But outside of that, I think he has a well-rounded skill set that would easily translate to the NFL. I did slide him down quite a bit because of his health and also him weighing in almost 15 pounds less than what he was listed at. That was kind of jarring for me. I didn't like seeing that. You know, I had him in my ranking as a 215-pound running back, you know, that might have even weighed in at 220 during the, you know, when the combine hit, but seeing him all the way down to 202 really hit his stock a little bit for me. But I'd like to see his pro day, and hopefully he can climb up a little bit, you know, because I don't know where the NFL is going to take him. And that's why I can't really rank him where I had him before, because I can't see it without the DC, you know?
I think he gave some of his weight to Bryce Young. You know, your boy Bryce Young came in.
Yeah.
He beefed up real quick. I think he might have borrowed some of that, you know,
yeah, man,
that way.
Hey, that works either way, but.
And the other guy in that situation is Sean Tucker. You know, Sean Tucker I have in Superflex as my 201. I know you have him in that similar type area. You know, like we both have him in that 201 to 201 Superflex, 201 to 202. So I feel like he falls in that late first round of your one quarterback league. Talk to me about what you're getting from him, because again, I mean, I can't preface this enough. I think all 4 of these running backs have talent that could be starter level talent, but everyone just seems to be pushing them back because we're so focused on Bijan. We're so focused on Gibbs. Most years, I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs, you'd be head over heels as the RB1 of the entire class. In some classes, you'd have Charbonnet and you'd be like, okay, this is a pretty good class. Now you got, you know, I feel like we're forgetting about these 4 guys just for that simple fact.
Yeah, this whole tier, like we said, is almost a straight line where they all have very similar talents. You know, Tucker, I do love. These guys are people that were ranked really, you know, far ahead of where they are right now. But unfortunately, the combine and the lack of, you know, participation kind of slides them back a little bit until we see, you know, pro days and you know, what we see from their actual NFL draft and what kind of DC they have. But any of these guys that we're listing right now, between, you know, Tucker, Evans, you know, Kendre, all those guys they could easily slide up to the late first, to the mid first, if it really, you know, hit as far as the draft goes. But, you know, it's hard to even nail exactly where they're going to be right now. It's so fluid.
The next wide receiver, I think our wide receiver 5 in the class, and you and I both agree, someone that we've both moved up, you know, in our rankings recently is Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers, you know, he had a good combine. You look at what he did, and man, I mean, that target share of 28% in air share yards, 37% over his final 3 seasons. This is a guy that had poor quarterback play. I mean, you know, he had a 68% catchable ball rate, which is second lowest in the entire class, but ran the 4.42. I think this is a guy that is going to be also pro ready, kind of like a Josh Downs light. But I think Zay Flowers is the guy that's going to get second round draft capital. And then you got to pay attention if these running backs, you know, we talk, if Zach Evans goes in round 4, then we got to start moving Zay Flowers above these guys. If Sean Tucker goes in that area, you want your running backs. Ideally, I want all 4 of those guys to go in the second round. I'm okay with them going in the third round. If they go in the 4th round, you can't pass up a guy like Zay Flowers.
Yeah, Zay Flowers is definitely climbing up a lot of boards right now. People are a little more familiar with his game, but I think he's going to be a really good PPR player. I think he's going to catch a lot of balls in the NFL. He's a talent that I've watched closely because I live pretty close to BC and I watched him in person a couple times. And, I loved his game. I love, his speed and just the way he approaches the game. He's a dog. As I would say, he's always in that game. He's always doing something, he's everywhere on the field. And I love seeing that from a player, so he's someone that I could probably slide up above those running backs. Like you said, if the DC doesn't hit for them. So something to watch for sure.
Now, let's recap here because we're about to do the 112, and I think this one's going to kind of blow some people's mind, and I think you and I are another guy that we're both moving up. So we got Bijan 1, JSN 2, Gibbs 3, Addison 4, Charbonnet 5, Quentin Johnson 6. Then at 7 through 10, we have the 4 running backs that we talked with Sean Tucker, Zach Evans. Who else do we have here? Help me out here quick.
Achane.
Yeah. And Sean Tucker. No, wait. Yep. Sean Tucker.
We didn't have Kendre, but he's in there. We didn't even talk about
Kendre Miller. So those 4 guys, we're in that area, and then Zay Flowers at 111. And for me, if we're playing tight end premium, I can't tell you how much I would love to have won the championship and draft Dalton Kincaid. Like, I'm falling in love with him. I see a lot of Zach Ertz. I think Dalton Kincaid he's moved over Michael Mayer for me. I know early on in this process, everybody loved Michael Mayer. Michael Mayer did not excel at the combine, but you look at Dalton Kincaid, 6'3", 246, 16 touchdowns. I mean, 16 touchdowns. That's insane over 31 collegiate games. He just, this past year, 70 receptions, 890 yards, 8 touchdowns. This guy has big-time playmaking skills. He has tight end upside. If he gets round 1 draft capital, he's instantly a top 10 dynasty tight end for me.
Yeah, I agree. He's a wide receiver in a tight end's body. He is, I wouldn't do this comp all around for him, but an Aaron Hernandez type of guy where he is athletic as hell. And he is
just not in the head. Yeah.
But he is without, the CTE. That's but he has that athletic ability and he has that receiving ability where you have to kind of cover him as a wide receiver. The only knock on him is his blocking, which
is going to put him on the outside. You're going to open him up. Like I said with Ertz, like you said with Hernandez, he's not Travis Kelce. We're not trying to go there. But, this is a guy that's going to be – look at what we talked about Evan Ingram. People were knocking him his rookie year, saying he couldn't block. And then what? He ended up being the slot guy, ended up being that wide receiver, tight end in the outside, playing like a wide receiver. And that's what we want, as long as he can stay on the field. And there are so many scenarios, like he goes to the Bengals or he goes, we get him into one of these guys that targets the tight end. And, man, it's exciting.
I could see him in a 2 tight end formation, as far as, having somebody in there for the blocking and he's just going to line up on the outside and just eat, he's going to be a difficult matchup for a lot of teams, especially on a team like the Bengals, where they're looking at T. Higgins and Chase on the other side of each other, and then they have him lining up too.
That's insane.
That's exciting. Yeah, that'd be great.
Now we're sticking with the tight end position. I think we have to talk about Darren Waller today. Darren Waller got traded to the Giants. You have to love that for Daniel Jones. You have to love that for Darren Waller, especially after Jacoby Meyer goes there. And I'm like, the line of scrimmage with Jimmy Garoppolo just got really crowded. But now Darren Waller goes in, and right now until the draft, and because there's not a wide receiver in free agency that is better than Darren Waller. So he is effectively, just like he was 2 years ago, he's the wide receiver 1 for Daniel Jones now, just like he was the wide receiver 1 for Derek Carr. And we knew then he was a top 3 dynasty tight end. If I come to you right now and I'm a win now team and I have the 112 and in a 1 quarterback and I offer you that for Darren Waller, is that a smash or pass for you? Would you rather have Kincaid or Darren Waller if you're win now?
I think it'd be foolish to go Kincaid if you're win now, without knowing exactly, where he's going, what kind of DC he's going to get. And it's tough because I think he could easily just surpass Waller year one because he has that kind of
one more injury, and Darren he passes him already.
Yeah, because Waller has that hamstring, and he's at that age where injuries linger. Even though I think Waller is going to bring Danny Dimes to the moon, I think they're going to I love it, man. I love that move for them, and I think they're not done making moves over there. But
it's perfect.
I would take Waller over Kincaid on a win now, but not easily. I think it's same tier for me.
Waller's been a screaming buy in dynasty startups right now. You go in at like wide, or like tight end 14 sometimes. Behind Cole Kmet and behind Chug and all kinds of different guys. We're trying to get up in there and now all of a sudden, man, if you were on the clock, you just hit hard. You definitely you hit it. So now we're moving into the second rounders, and there's a bigger tier here, right? And I'm looking at your rankings right now, and I'm looking at mine, and we're very similar. We have in the next couple of picks. So we have Tyjae Spears, we have Tank Bigsby, Roschon Johnson, Jalen Hyatt, Michael Mayer. I think that's all kind of one big tier there. So I think for me, once it hits 112 in a one quarterback, and we talk about it we talk about that smash zone from 110 to 204 in Superflex. I think in one quarterback, that's the 107 to the 112. That's that smash zone for you, because once you get to 201, there's a lot of what ifs, right? Let's start with some of those. I mean, I think Tyjae Spears, if he proves he's healthy, I think, again, needs the draft capital. Another guy with high upside, Roschon Johnson. I think if we didn't have Bijan Robinson, again, we would be talking about him a lot higher. And Tank Bigsby. All three of those guys, I got to see the draft capital. Like, that is going to be, we talked about it for that other set, but this set, that draft capital is huge. Like, I think Johnson ends up getting drafted first out of this group, and then Bigsby, and then Spears, but it's going to mean everything. And I think these are the guys that we look at that fall into the Khalil Herbert area, right? Like, they just went into the right spot. Like, they fell in there as the number 2 where you could see that this guy is going to get an opportunity eventually.
Yeah. Roschon, my buddy JC at JC Dynasty on Twitter, shout out for him. He does a lot of film breakdown, and he really got me on to Roschon comping to Chris Carson with his running style. Yeah. It's just he's aggressive. He hits the hole. He's a little violent at times. I love that comp, and I've been high on him. Just thinking about a healthy Chris Carson in any backfield is pretty exciting. And then right. Tank is amazing too. Tank is a north-south guy. He's a big guy, and he sticks with his name where he's going to break tackles. He's going to run through holes. He's got a good burst speed too. I think he could easily be a 3-down back, somewhere depending on where he goes. So you're right. All these guys are high upside second rounders that could easily, exceed like a Dameon Pierce type of ceiling for their year ones if they get a good landing spot.
Yeah, and the only wide receiver that really falls in that second round in these guys that we're talking about is Jalen Hyatt. We've talked about him on the pod before. I think Jalen Hyatt really hurt his draft stock, like at the combine. We were expecting him to blaze. We were expecting him to really show out where we saw his number one trait was his speed. I mean, that's what we saw in on the tape, and then it just didn't. It wasn't quite there what we were expecting. We were expecting him to blaze out, and I think he's still going to be a guy that ends up going, in the first round of the NFL draft, early second. And I think, again, these three guys, running backs we're talking about here, if Hyatt goes in the first and these guys go in the fourth, yeah, you have to move him up ahead of there, and I think we're definitely going to look at that. The next tier down of running backs, you look at, we have Dwayne McBride, we have Eric Gray. This is an area where, again, it's got 100% landing spot, 100% what these guys do, but I think our listeners need to hear about both of them. I think McBride and Gray are guys we haven't talked about, before we start wrapping up this show. Talk to me about what you think of both of these players.
Yeah, Eric Gray has been one of my favorite steals. He's actually sliding in a lot of mock drafts into the early third, which I would take him a lot earlier than that. But he is a good size back. He has speed. He has some elusiveness to his game. He's a good pass catcher. I think he's a very well-rounded back, and he is a DC dependent kind of guy. I think he could probably be a good third round back. And once again, these guys are so close. If one of them goes day 2, or if one of them pops over the other, it's just it's going to be like leapfrog. It's so crazy how talented this draft class is and how close these guys are. It's not like 2022 where we saw giant tiers. We were like this guy and then that guy, and it was so solid. This is Eric Gray can be in that tier of Roshan and even the Zach Evans tier. I don't know. They're so close in talent. Without that, I think the other guys have that pedigree. That's probably going to put them a little bit higher in the rankings and the draft itself. But, and then McBride is somebody I'm a little bit lower than Gray on. I think I would have him under him. I think my rankings haven't reflected that yet. But the more I'm looking into his tape, I like him a lot. I think his vision is a little left. I think there's some improvement to be made. And vision is tough for me because if I see a back without vision, I think that is the way that they're going to go in the NFL. If you can't see the holes and you can't see, what's happening in front of you and you're just making bad decisions, it's hard for me to, see that translating to a great, NFL career. But he does flash. I don't think he has consistent enough play for me to put him in this tier, to be honest, right now.
And the other wide receivers in this area, I mean, we still at least, man, he hurt his draft stock, obviously, but Kayshon Boutte, we're looking at 29-inch vertical and a 118-inch broad jump. Like, Mike, I think you and I could do that at the combine. We got to be pretty close. And I think he hurt his draft stock a lot, but he's super young, 21 years old. The other guy in that area, Marvin Mims, also 21 years old, worth that second round, rookie pick when you're talking one quarterback. And I think draft capital for them is going to mean a lot as well. This was fun, I know we were a little skeptical. We were like, hey, let's talk one quarterbacks. And you're like, dude, I haven't done one of those, in a decade.
Yeah,
but we wanted to give you guys a little bit of that flavor, a little bit of an idea of like how different one quarterback and Superflex is. I hope you guys enjoyed that because most of you guys listen to Superflex, but we wanted to give you guys the content as well. Like we hit you up with the running backs, we hit you up with the wide receivers, we hit you up with some of the tight ends. Guys, man, who's the one guy out of this group outside the big guys that you're most excited about? For me, it's Kincaid. Like I keep gushing about him. I'm super excited about him. Who's that biggest guy for you right now that you're excited for?
I would probably say Chase Brown is somebody that isn't talked about a lot, but he is somebody that, he had the injury in college. He was kind of viewed as a top tier guy, maybe before that injury, and he's getting a big discount, but he really showed out in the combine. He tested really, really well. He's sliding, he's climbing back up in those rankings for me. I think he's going to be a great steal and maybe the mid third or early third. He's somebody that I'm keeping my eye on for sure.
I love it. Guys, make sure you follow at Fantasy Nerd Boy and myself at Dynasty, no underscore, just at Dynasty Dad FF. Thanks again, guys, for tuning in and enjoy the process.
Thank you.
Dude.